Good morning, good morning, good morning. I trust everyone is okay. Oh, Mr. Brown, he's getting rapid at logging onto these. Let's just wait for him to load up before I have to do the legals. Dum dum dum. Come on down, Mr. Brown. Here he is, co-hosting.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me just quickly
Hello.
do the legals. Hello. One sec. As usual, nothing discussed on this Spaces session constitutes trading or investment advice, or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, trading as PIQ, or PIQ Suite, or its affiliates, including the hosts, which is obviously Mr. Brown and myself. Good morning, mate. How are you?
I'm all right.
You sounded quite hesitant there. What's happening?
I won't describe in graphic detail, but I'd say I've just read the WhatsApp message you just sent
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
as you were going through those legal disclaimers.
Yes.
Yes.
Something very,
Yes.
very naughty.
But moving on from that, I was going to say, I suppose we need to behave ourselves this morning because these are now going out on YouTube, I believe.
Yes, exactly. So, especially they're also like clips of them are also going out on TikTok and Instagram at some point as well. So basically, it
God,
means
what poor sod has got to listen to this and edit it?
well, this is the thing. No, we've got AI for that. Don't worry. There's no one actually listening. No one listens to it all. I hate to break it to you, mate.
Is that a bloke's initials?
Yeah, another Indian. I've got a very good team of
Oh
Indians.
no.
Who knows? No, but it's not racist because it's true. Because PIQ genuinely have an awesome. Well, they're technically Nepalese, but they are the best people ever, and I love them dearly.
Technically.
I'll keep digging that hole. But yes,
It's like
basically,
something out of Little Britain, this.
we got to cut down on the swearing, so no like shit, cunt, bugger. But there we go. Anyway, moving on. What happened yesterday? I've
Yeah,
completely forgotten.
let's move swiftly on from that. What did happen yesterday? I think not a lot would be the
Tune
accurate
back in
answer.
tomorrow.
Well, yeah, it very much felt like a sort of classic kind of summer markets day yesterday, to be honest with you, with markets kind of just very.
It didn't. I'll disagree there because we weren't in the
Why?
pub.
Well, yeah, there is that, I suppose. But it was only Tuesday. But markets were rather rudderless and lacking any sort of conviction yesterday. We did see some modest downside in the equity space. The S&P ending the day around 0.2% lower. The Nasdaq down about 0.4, and it is just worth noting that some of that downside has extended during the APAC session, and we see Nasdaq futures trading around 1% lower as I speak. Although the S&P future is also lower by around 0.6%. Elsewhere, again, markets really lacking any sort of direction. The FX market very, very quiet indeed. The dollar stuck between 104.20 and 104.50 for the majority of the day. Although it is worth noting that dollar yen has continued to move to the downside this morning, trading below the 155 figure. We were down about 1% yesterday. Down another 0.5% this morning. Seems like a fairly chunky unwind of the carry trade is going on in the yen, but elsewhere there is really nothing of any note going on in the FX space, and that also applies to fixed income, and it also applies to gold as well, which remained range bound around $2,400 an ounce for a second straight day. I guess the most intriguing move yesterday was in the commodity space. Crude down by around 1.5% on the day, testing $77 a barrel to the downside. That's a fourth straight daily decline for the front month contract and sees the front contract trade to its lowest levels since the 10th of June. So one worth bearing in mind there. In terms of data and news flow, catalysts were relatively thin on the ground. We did see a relatively soft existing home sales print out of the United States at 3.89 million in June. That's below the 3.99 million expectation and also below the bottom of the forecast range and down from the prior 4.11 million. Consumer confidence in the Eurozone a touch better than expected at -13 for a prior -14, but neither of those prints moved the market too much. In terms of news on the political front in the United States, ABC News reporting that Josh Shapiro and Mark Kelly, they are the leading candidates to be Kamala Harris's vice president or running mate. Josh Shapiro, of course, governor of Pennsylvania. Mark Kelly has an incredible CV, actually. He was a Navy aviator. He then decided to stop doing that and become an astronaut instead and flew to the space and flew exactly. flew to the International Space Station 3 or 4 times, and then got bored of going to space and decided to go into the Senate instead. And he's now a senator for Arizona, which is both of those, of course, Pennsylvania and Arizona, key swing states in the November election that Harris will need to win in order to try and plot a path to the White House. And of course, picking one of those candidates as a running mate would be designed to try and help her carry those key states.
I might be completely wrong here, but I also have just a little
Go on.
bonus fact on Kelly. I've got I believe he's the twin, right? He's one of the twins of astronauts.
He
I
is,
believe it's
yes.
him that also holds the record for the longest time up in the ISS. But a little bit of a bonus fact then. I think it's him. Anyway.
Well, there we go. He's also got more hair than me,
Well,
which will only be
I was
funny
just
if you
looking
go
at
and
a
look.
picture
If
of him,
you only
man.
go and Google a
I was
picture of
looking
him.
as you said that, I'm looking at a picture of him, and I didn't want to make that comment, but yeah.
Moving on, sticking with politics here in the UK, for anyone who cares, the Conservative Party, they finally set the rules for their leadership contest. There is going to be a whole host of debates and votes among MPs, and then more after the summer recess. The key date to know is that it's the 2nd of November when we will find out who the leader of the Conservative Party will be, which from a media management perspective is a ridiculous decision, given that that's 3 days before the election in the United States. Nevertheless, nominations for that position opened this evening. James Cleverly, former Home Secretary, former Foreign Secretary, was the first to throw his hat in the ring last night. A few other.
I've actually seen him in.
Go on.
Seen him in the American bar a couple of times.
Have you? Well, there we go. He gets my vote. He drinks in a good place.
I mean, what?
Oh dear. In terms of some more macro news flow from yesterday, we had a 2-year note. It's very solid, stopping through the when issued by 2.4 basis points. So that's a pretty decent sign of demand there. And then, of course, we had some earnings after the close yesterday as well. The main ones to keep an eye on: Alphabet. They beat on both top and bottom lines. Revenues at 84.74 billion, EPS at 1.89 US dollars, of course. Importantly, cloud revenues, Google Cloud revenues, delivered a relatively sizable beat, and they also announced a cash dividend of 20 cents per share. Relatively choppy after hours, although eventually settling around 1.5% to 2% higher in post-market trade. The other one we heard from last night was Tesla, who were pretty grim, to be completely honest with you. Well, they've just run out of charge, haven't they? Let's be honest.
Yes. It's even better than I was expecting. I'll give it to them.
Adjusted EPS at 52 cent in the second quarter, well below expectations of 60 cent. Revenues did beat at 25.5 billion, although they were Tesla again flagging that they see a notably lower growth rate for the remainder of 2024. Their shares down by around 2 to 2.5% after hours yesterday. Of course, we will keep an eye on how both of those trade and also how stocks trade in sympathy with those earnings in the sectors more broadly. For example, Microsoft, they report earnings next week. We will, of course, look to see how they trade when the pre-market session gets underway in around about half an hour's time. But that is pretty much it in terms of yesterday.
Can I just quickly say that whilst Michael was talking, I don't want anyone to think that I had quite aggressive flatulence. There was a motorbike going past with its muffler removed. So I didn't want anyone to think that was me, on the breakfast beans. Anyway, moving on. Some headlines via our friends at Newswalk. As always, we start in the Middle East. IDF has launched a new incursion into West Bank's Tulkarm. Artillery shelling and Israeli tank fire was reported on the east of Khan Yunis. The Islamic resistance in Iraq said it conducted a drone attack on a vital target in the north of Eilat. Moving away from there, we've got US presidential candidate Trump's advisors floated higher target for NATO defense spending. This would be quite an interesting one to follow if he gets in, because we know how hawkish he's been on other countries kind of keeping up to their limit, namely Germany. Obviously, Germany are known to be below their 2% GDP target. I don't know if you remember, Michael, but there was a story that came out a little while ago that it turned out, even though they were still below 2%, that also included some like double counting, and they were like using bits of the budget that weren't really militarily like centric to try and say that was work for NATO. So it'd be very interesting to see what's happening there. Also remember that Germany have that massive hole in their budget, so that could be an interesting one to follow, the old US-German relationship. Anyway, French prosecutors said that a Russian was arrested over a destabilization plot during the Paris Olympics. This will be the second or third one of these we've seen so far. Obviously, Olympics coming up. All eyes on that to see if there's any untowardness going on during the games. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Hayashi. I'm guessing on that's a pronunciation. I'm sticking with it. Said what that I think that Hayashi. Yeah, don't do the eyes. Said that
Oh
Russia's
no!
decision. Said
I
that
love how we
Russia's
said we had to behave ourselves as well.
well, I haven't sworn much this time, which for me is very, very good, because I use them as regular nouns. Um, Decision to restrict 13 Japanese individuals entry, including Toyota Motors chairman, is totally unacceptable. And they filed a complaint against Russia over their decision. Basically, it's a bit of tit for tat over there. We've got Starmer and von der Leyen plan a meeting to reset UK EU ties. Now, what that means, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of people that's going to be like, including Farage, that are going to get a bit frothy over headlines like this. We'll see what comes of that. I don't think for a second the fears that some people have of like we're going to re-enter the EU. I don't. That's just not going to happen. But it'd be interesting to see what kind of barriers are withdrawn or removed if that's possible. Don't know what you think on that, Michael.
It will cause a whole load of political pantomime once again, but
I,
is it going to make
I,
any difference to anything? Probably
I,
not in the grand scheme
I'm
of
with you
things.
on that. I think it'll be a load of headlines, a lot of shouting, more division will be sowed, but nothing's going to change. Um, what else we got? Obviously, just to follow up from yesterday, we mentioned about copper supply and the glut of supply. Obviously, copper futures languishing around a 3-month low after a recent downtrend amid the glum mood. And if you weren't listening yesterday, basically it seems to be commodity wise, we seem to be entering a bit of a oversupply coming into next year, which is getting more and more attention from the street and all their research papers. And that's about it.
Nice
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks.
Well, in terms of, I don't know why I sounded so surprised there, to be honest.
Oh, we
And in
no.
terms
This good. We
of,
both know. We both know what.
well, yeah, true. True. Right. Looking ahead to today, then, at first glance, the economic calendar appears quite busy, but when you dig into it, it is full of PMI surveys, flash PMI surveys for July, to be specific. So I don't think that these are going to have too much of an impact. And certainly, this economic cycle more broadly, there have been a number of very valid questions raised over the validity of these sentiment surveys, given that survey response rates have been falling quite considerably. So do just bear that con when the data this
Oh, we've already
morning.
had some. We've
In
already
any
had
case, just
some very entertaining data for me. I'll give you a clue.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure you've had a chance
I
to use
did.
your
I
meme
did.
with the
Whilst on the
German
call.
figures this morning. But oh, right, especially that manufacturing print. I'm glad you're focused on what we're doing here, right? Anyway. In terms of expectations for the remainder of the data, the Eurozone composite PMI due at 9 o'clock this morning, that's expected to remain unchanged at 50.9 in July. At 9:30 this morning, we get the data for the UK. The composite PMI here is expected to tick marginally higher to 52.6 from a prior 52.3. And then at 2:45 this afternoon, we get the S&P global PMIs out of the United States. Besides that, there are a few bits and bobs worth bearing in mind. Also at 2:45 this afternoon, we get a policy decision from the Bank of Canada. The BOC expected to deliver a second straight 25 basis point rate cut, bringing rates to 4.5%. The OAS curve over in Canada prices an 87% chance of a rate cut today, while pricing a total of 67 basis points worth of easing by the end of the year, therefore implying that if the BOC were to cut by 25 basis points today, the market prices around a 75% chance that they deliver 2 more such cuts before the year is out. The only other notable data released today comes at 3 from the United States. We have the latest US new home sales data. I would expect expectations for that are rather tepid after the disappointing existing home sales figures that we got yesterday. In terms of supply, we have a 5-year note auction from the United States this evening, $70 billion worth being auctioned off. Speakers, of course, the Fed remain in their pre-meeting blackout period, but we do hear from the ECB's Philip Lane and Vice President Luis de Guindos throughout the European morning. And it's another relatively busy slate of corporate earnings today, albeit absent. Before the market opened, we hear from AT&T and RTX, formerly Raytheon, and after the market closed, we hear from IBM, and we also hear from Ford, and we'll see whether their shares can motor higher after the close once they've reported earnings.
Did you see how I like wheeled back the F-bomb there? Because I'm really trying to be good for YouTube.
Yes.
That tested me. I'm not gonna lie. That really tested me. Oh, you're insatiable, Mr. Brown.
Oh, so people say, mate.
Oh,
So people say.
God. Oh, God, this is really hard
Oh
not
dear.
swearing.
For safety, shall we leave it
Yeah,
there?
I think we better. Well, I think we better. Yes, thank you. Is that it? Yeah, to be honest, I'm shell shocked.
That is it.
Right.
Yeah, I thought I'd end on a pun.
Oh, God, what a better way to end. Well, thank you very much for that, Pun Master General, Mr. Brown. Listeners, thank you as always for listening in. Yeah, I'll have a quiet word with Michael. I'll try and fix this up. Right, catch you all tomorrow. If you're trading, keep it tight.
Cheers, guys.
See ya. Bye.
Bye bye.